Hi guys, this is Hero, and today I'm going to be discussing the best way, in my opinion, I think we can deal with anger overall spiritually in this lifetime. So I'm going to break this video up into 3 parts. So the first part is how to deal with anger from a past sense. So how we all have an ungrounded manner in which we are have store anger inside us based off of our past. So I'm going to discuss that. Then I'm going to discuss the best way to deal with anger that occurs presently, and then discuss future ways that we can reduce anger. Okay, so the first and very important part is dealing with anger from our past. So there's a quote where it goes something like, if you're angry at someone, it's basically like you holding a hot coal and waiting to throw it at that person. Okay, even if you hit that person with the hot coal, your hand got burned so much holding on to that hot coal, kind of waiting for the, to take your revenge out of anger, so to speak. Okay, so why am I saying this? Or what does this mean? So this basically means that anger usually is hurting you more than the other person. Okay, we all, we've been trained kind of by like the media and stuff like that, that, if someone kind of hurts us or wrongs us in any way, that, we have to quote unquote get back at that person. Okay, just to prove our worth or whatever, we've been subconsciously trained to think and behave like. But I would challenge you to kind of think of things in terms of karmically. Okay, so whatever has happened to us, a lot of it had to do with karma. Okay, that's just kind of how it was meant to be. If someone, let's just say you were in a relationship with someone and someone, left you or hurt you or something like that, I would strongly consider you to not, think of, how can you get back at that person, show them, blah, 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 and use, run on an ungrounded, anger to kind of, proceed from those, thoughts and emotions that you haven't dealt with. Okay, most likely that thing was meant to happen. Now, I will say this. There's another quote where it's like, someone who blames others has a long way to go on their spiritual journey. Someone who blames himself is about halfway there. And someone who blames no one at all has pretty much almost arrived. Okay, so what this means is like, once you understand that whatever has happened, whatever is happening, and whatever will happen, it's kind of just the way it should be. Okay, there are some things karmically that are just meant to happen to you that, we cannot control everything. Okay, we would like to, our egos would like to, but we cannot control everything. So we need to accept that, completely, fully, wholly accept that there's a lot of stuff in this life that's going to happen to us that we cannot control, even though that we've been taught to control it. So we need to kind of unlearn those unresourceful thinking patterns that, we can always be in control of everything, because that's not true. Another thing, whatever has happened to you, we do not need to identify with those things. So what does that mean? Let's just say someone left you. What happens is we identify with like the thing, or with like the concept of, oh, I got left by this person or something like this. Okay, I'm just making up an example. But we identify with a lot of quote unquote bad stuff that's happened. And we need to not do that. Okay, we need to, live more in the present and not identify with anything in the past. And also, your mind is going to throw a lot of thoughts and emotions related to past stuff, and we need to not identify with that either. Okay, because that's going to lead to possibly more anger. So we need to accept the fact that our thoughts and emotions are not us, and then accept the fears related to those thoughts and emotions from the past. Because when we accept that, our chances of anger going forward into the future are not as likely. Okay, so that's kind of the past component. Now I'm going to touch briefly on the present component. Okay, so the present component, we need to understand that anger is a part of this human experience to an extent. Okay, so I just said in the past, we don't need to identify with our thoughts and emotions. That's the same thing when it comes to present stuff. We have a lot of buildup when it comes to our past stuff, but we also need to understand in the present that this is, even if we are spiritually elevated and stuff, we all have egos, okay? We all have minds that, have thoughts and emotions. We need to understand that ego or that mind, it's going to throw the emotion of anger at us, okay? Even if we taking care of everything in our past, taking care of everything in your past is a huge step, or, slowly, starting to take care of everything in your past that you haven't dealt with, that you've kind of stuffed down, right? Because a lot of us, when things happen, we've been trained to just stuff them down instead of dealing with them and accepting, the thoughts and emotions related to them, and disidentifying and attaching to the things that have happened. But in the present, even if we've done all that hard work, we need to accept the fact that anger can still arise from the mind, okay? And what we need to do is we need to accept that, okay? Whenever you feel anger, accept that. Now, this does not mean that you act out of anger. Okay, we just acknowledge that anger is occurring. We are not our mind. We don't need to identify with the anger that comes. We can just accept the anger that comes and just let it go. When it's time to leave, it's time to leave. It's just the mind doing the mind. We are not the mind. You are not the ego. Okay, remember this. Also, in the present, you want to do, when you get angry, when you notice you get angry because of something, okay, let's just say something happens. Let's just say, like, a superior at work or some like elder family member says something that gets you angry. Dealing with the past and dealing with the present go hand in hand. The more you deal with the past, your past anger, the more you'll be able to better deal with your present. And the more you better deal with your present, the more you'll understand and be able to deal with your past. So in the present, you're going to notice a little bit of common themes here. In the present, let's just say someone says something to you that, really ticks you off. You need to disidentify with that. What happens is the ego is like, oh man, this person said this to me. Like you identify with that, and you want to, do something about it, because that's how you've been trained, right? By society, or just, that's kind of how the negative nature of the mind is. But I'd encourage you to just disidentify with that and let it go. How other people, represent themselves, that's how they're representing themselves. How other people treat you is more of a representation of themselves than you. Okay, just keep that in mind. And also, when you disidentify with stuff right there in the present, you'll realize, oh man, I have all this baggage, when, let's just say, my superiors at work, or, some other, elderly person, whenever someone has said, something to me in the past, I notice, man, I have a lot of that, really built up inside me that I probably should let go. So the more you deal with it in the present, also the more you will also deal with it in the past. Okay, so I hope you guys understand that. Also, something in the present. So I covered accepting the actual emotion of anger, and then when anger does pop up, try to question if there's a reason why your mind is throwing that anger in the present, and try to identify the root cause and try to deal with that root cause, usually by accepting something, okay? Like I said, I just gave the example of accepting an identification of some sort, but another thing could be accepting a fear. Let's just say some kind of fear gets promoted, and then you get angry in that way. Like someone says something that, like, oh man, you're not good enough. Okay, so let's just say someone makes a joke about how you're not good looking. Okay, just an example. So there's two components. There's one, the identification portion of, like, okay, this person said this to me, like, how dare they, blah, blah, blah. I already covered that. But then there's the second factor, which is a fear factor. Like, oh man, like, what if I'm not good enough? And then that, startles the anger even more, right? So we need to accept the fear that, oh, okay, I noticed a fear got brought up, right? This person said something, and I noticed a fear got brought up that, I fear not, being accepted by others, right? Possibly due to me not being, the best looking. We need to accept that fear. And what that means is you got to accept, okay, if I'm not good looking, or he doesn't think I'm good looking, she doesn't think I'm good looking, if everyone doesn't think I'm good looking, it depends on how deep this fear runs, right? Usually it runs pretty deep, a lot deeper than we think. But, people don't think I'm good looking, or people don't accept me, people are not going to validate me. That is okay. Just because you accept something doesn't mean you believe this thing. Okay, so just because you accept all those things I just said does not think that you actually believe that you are an ugly person. That does not mean that. What you are doing is you're accepting the fear related to this thing that's causing the anger inside of you. So you're no longer living in fear. Once you're not living in fear, those negative lower emotions are less likely to pop up and less likely to have a strong influence on you. Okay? So you want to just dissolve the fear, accept the fear. That does not mean you believe it. Okay? But we've been so trained these days to act out of fear that this almost seems like, unearthly to, accept your fears. What do you mean accept your fears? You got to just, you can't just do that. You gotta let that fear drive you. Well, I'm challenging you to not. I'm basically telling you not to. I'm telling you to accept the fears, and once you accept that, you'll act, behave, and think in a much, much more grounded way. Okay? So I hope that kind of made sense. So I covered the past, I covered the present. They kind of go hand in hand. Now I'm going to cover the future. Future things we can do to avoid fear. There's the general gist of things like, avoid negative people, because the more negative people you avoid, the more negative energies you are not around. Fear is a little bit of anger is more of anger, fear, all these stuff, all the negative is kind of all tied together. Okay, so the more you avoid the negative, the more, you're not going to get angry and stuff. But some other stuff that we can do is also, avoid negative energy foods, right? Like processed foods, stuff like low energy food. Okay, like chips and cookies and stuff like that. All this stuff, you think in the moment you're so, quote unquote happy because you ate this thing and it gave you that instant satisfaction, but you are what you eat spiritually. So if you eat that, or even drink, this has a lot also, alcohol and drugs. Okay. So alcohol, drugs, a lot of these instant gratification, satisfaction sort of things, when you consume the energies related, okay, let's just talk about just food and drinks right now, not alcohol, but just, sugary processed drinks. When you consume all that stuff, there's dead negative processed energy in that. And when you take it inside of you, that ends up, circulating inside your own, energies inside your body. So when that happens, your body overall becomes more and more negative energy. So you're more likely to portray more and more negative, emotions like anger, and you're more likely to get in a more negative mind state, live in your more lower self, which is going to cause a huge compounding effect, which is not going to be great. Okay, especially when it comes to anger. So I'd encourage you to do that, tackle that. Now, when it comes to stuff like drugs and alcohol, it's doing the same thing in the sense of that it's okay. It may seem like you are not, you're releasing anger or stuff like that, but that is in a very, very short term. In the long term, you're actually making it worse. One, the drugs and alcohol usually, and watch my drugs and alcohol video for more video on this, but usually are going to lower your vibration a little bit more. Okay. Two, what's happening is you're slowly becoming more and more dependent on using that drugs and alcohol to, you see, we're all a little, especially if we haven't done the spiritual work, a little bit ungrounded in the way anger sits in us, right? That's why I just mentioned this whole video, the past and the present methods on how to deal with anger groundedly, overall, long term. But what some people will do, instead of doing that work, they'll resort to drugs and alcohol. So what that'll do is on a short term, that'll get you nice and grounded, okay? For a very, very short term, okay? If you have a lot of anger inside of you, you'll kind of express it, okay? Usually, even if you don't do drugs and alcohol, but like if you ungroundedly store a lot of anger inside of you, it will naturally one day just get burst anyways, right? Which is probably what has happened a couple times, which is also why you're probably watching this video. But the alcohol kind of allows you to release it a little bit, a little bit more gradually, you could say. But the problem here is that your body, or your mind, I should say, is becoming more and more dependent on those drugs or alcohol to release those certain emotions. So what's actually happening is over time, your body and your mind is getting adjusted to, okay, you're only releasing those emotions on drugs and alcohol. And when you're not on drugs and alcohol, you're actually storing it even more. You're suppressing all that negative energy even more instead of dealing with it. Because like I said, the drugs and alcohol also lower your consciousness. See, all this kind of stuff, they all kind of tie together. Okay. So yeah, in the future, I just recommend overall just maintain good habits. You'll do better. And then in the future, as far as future stuff and past stuff, do more stuff to release the anger a little bit groundedly, and not just stuff it down where it'll pop up later. Okay, and the more you release from your past stuff, the more you'll be able to act better groundedly in the present. And the more you act better groundedly in the present, the more you'll be able to identify and be aware and release stuff from your past. Okay, so I hope this all made sense. If you have any questions or comments, as usual, you can let me know. Hopefully this video helped. And until next time, talk to you guys later. Thank you.